Sister Mary Alma Miller was an excellent nursing instructor, and she was well loved by all the students at St. Joe's. As an example of this, when I was a freshman, I did not live at the nurses' dorm, but I was out there for playing cards, I guess. And while we were playing cards, someone came in and said, "Sister Alma is here." She must have been on a break from Catholic U, where she was getting her master's degree. And that's why I had no idea who she was, because I'd never seen her. But they all rose up together and rushed to go see Sister Mary Alma, because they'd missed her while she was gone. Now, all this happened before I was Catholic. I was just your run-of-the-mill Protestant graduate of a public high school, Ottumwa High School. But the sisters had this tricky little thing that they did, like leaving missals in the dining room, so some curious student like me could pick them up. And I did. And because I did that, I converted to Catholicism during my senior year at St. Joe's. Now, I had the good fortune of having Pat, also known as Sister Mary Alma, but Pat by that time, of having her as an instructor both at St. Joseph's Hospital School of Nursing and at Marycrest. And I don't know who was following who, but St. Joe's the School of Nursing closed in 1971, and I was already at Marycrest pursuing my BSN. And Pat, after the School of Nursing closed, went to Marycrest. So I had her both at St. Joe's and at Marycrest, and I think that fact contributed to my becoming a good nurse. Then, later, I went to work at the University of Iowa Hospitals, and lo and behold, there she was. She was working on her PhD, but she must have also had students, because she had students on one of the units in the department where I was working. So we got reacquainted. And one day, I asked her over for dinner, and another Marycrest graduate was there too, I think. And I don't know what the conversation was about, but at some point she said to me, "You should become an associate." Well, I thought about that for a long time, and eventually took that a step farther and entered the community. So she was instrumental in my becoming a humility, along with other sisters at St. Joe's. I really loved being at St. Joe's. Now, another aspect of Pat's life was cars. Her cars were, at least initially, red, because she was a native Nebraskan, had gone to the University of Nebraska, and was a huge fan of Nebraska Cornhuskers, Big Red. So she always had red cars. That's why I'm wearing red. A characteristic of her driving was that she had a lead foot, and she must have thought that she was at a Cornhuskers football game, because she really liked tailgating. On a more serious note, there was a little frame on her desk at St. Joe's that said, "Arise, my love, my beautiful one, and come." And wouldn't it be good if we all think of God saying that to each one of us?
Sister Claudia Ellen Pentecost was an acquaintance of mine as a child. We both lived in Lewistown. We both went to St. Leo's School. Claudia Ellen was the youngest of 10 children, and I had one sister. So I didn't really know what it was like growing up in a family of 10 children. But her family lived just, maybe 6 blocks from me. So I had spent some time at her home. I think she came to my house a couple of times. Claudia Ellen was the tomboy, and she was a proclaimed tomboy. She said she was a tomboy, so she loved playing softball. She was very good at it, a good pitcher. I can remember that. She was an excellent pitcher when we'd play softball. We entered at the same time. I think I chatted with her a bit about it, but she just said, "Yeah, that was Claudia Ellen. I'm going to enter." She didn't have a lot of words to say. She just says, "Yeah, I'm going to go to Ottumwa." Well, I was thrilled that we entered together, and I was thrilled that she said she was going to enter, and so I didn't have to do it by myself. I remember one time, I don't know what the occasion was, but we were in my car. We were parked out here in front, and we just sat in the car and had quite a conversation. And she never really ever intended to be a teacher, but she ended up, and I think she enjoyed it. She loved the kids. And I think she was a real asset to the community for her teaching. She did some hospital work before she entered. She worked at St. Joe Hospital for a while before she entered the community. And I think she would have enjoyed that, but she became a good teacher. I've heard that she was an excellent teacher. What I recall most now about Claudia Ellen were the last times I saw Claudia Ellen alive. And those times were in the chapel with her saying the rosary. That's ingrained in my mind as every time I think of Claudia Ellen, I think of her sitting in the chapel close to the wall on this side of the chapel and saying the rosary. She was very dedicated to the rosary. I remember that from early on. I'm just glad I knew Claudia Ellen and her family for all these years. By the time she went to glory, I think God was very happy to have her join the crowd up there.
I lived with Rosalia Riedel on 3 different missions. Albia, which is my first assignment after profession, Des Moines, St. Teresa's, and Davenport, Pleasant Street. We also both retired at Humility of Mary Center in 2007. I think it would be very true to describe Rosalia as someone who was always calm and serious about any job or tasks she had to fill or do. I have to add that she loved parties and gatherings of the community as well. Her travel experiences were numerous, and she relished every single one of them, saving the memories with good photos. I enjoyed listening to her travel stories as she shared her pictures. One thing that really impressed me about her was her tolerance for pain. She had various surgeries when we lived together, but she never complained about any discomfort. I have often wondered how it was that she possessed such good qualities as a religious. I think possibly it was because she was older when she entered the community and was already somewhat formed after having worked in the public sector before becoming a CHM. She loved her family and would share stories about them with us. I'm sure she was very proud of living as long as she did and was happy to be remembered as a centenarian.
This evening, we come together to remember and honor the life of a beloved CHM, classmate, and friend, Jeanette Copel, known as Sister Renee. On January 6, 1954, Jeanette joined 12 postulants and Mother Mary Nicholas in the novitiate at Ottumwa Heights. Sister Kathleen Reel, Associate Rita Foley Hagner, known as Sister Mary Dolorita, and I remain among the living. This tribute is our collective reflections of Jeanette's life as we three knew her as a CHM, whose life was stricken at a young age with multiple sclerosis, or known as MS. When she was diagnosed, Jeanette was in her early days of teaching in Dunlap, Iowa, where she was missioned with other CHMs, including Rita. At that time, we sisters customarily observed times and places of silence, and it was uncommon to share personal concerns, such as a health issue, with anyone other than the superior. Consequently, the other sisters in the house were likely unaware of all that Jeanette was experiencing with the onslaught of the disease. Rita, however, observed certain physical changes in her. We can only imagine what Jeanette's response to the diagnosis might have been. Rita recalls Jeanette's favorite novitiate experience was Dominican Father Augustine Rock's theology classes taught each summer in the Heights Auditorium. As a postulant and senior novice, Jeanette joined 4 other classmates commuting to Marycrest College on Tuesdays and Thursdays to complete our degrees. We got to know Jeanette as our traveling companion, who preferred dozing or reading rather than taking a turn driving. After we made our first vows, those of us in the class who had been commuting to Marycrest, along with a few other sisters, were sent to Marycrest to help set up the rooms for the incoming students. One morning, Sister Annette Gallagher and another Marycrest sister invited us to have 10 o'clock break in the model apartment in Upham Hall, where we were treated to hot water with instant coffee. There were no cookies, but recreation was the treat. As we were enjoying our recreation, I happened to glance over to the window, where I saw Jeanette standing alone, deeply engaged in the book she was reading. When Jeanette's brother Jim visited with me shortly after Jeanette's death, we were sharing memories. I happened to mention my Marycrest story, and before I finished it, he interrupted to say, "That sounds just like home." He went on to say, the family would be sitting together here, and Jeanette would be over there on a chair reading. What does the consummate bookworm do when she is afflicted with a life-changing disease like MS? Probably she would seek refuge in a place where she could be at home in an environment where reading would be primary, acceptable, and encouraged. What did Jeanette do? She chose to study and earn degrees in library science and religious studies, became a teacher, librarian, volunteer as a reading recorder, as well as other similar settings. Jeanette was an intellectual, a lifelong learner who received numerous honors and awards for her achievements. How might we join the others in honoring Jeanette's life dedicated to reading, especially today when the trend seems to be wide-range decline in reading habits and in public library usage? We can read a book, buy a book, use the library, give a book as a gift, or join a book club in her honor. Meanwhile, Jeanette enjoys eternal life in the company of her favorite authors and writers among all the angels and saints in glory.
Associate Pat Skinner died in Des Moines on July 30th, 2023, at the age of 95. She had strong roots in Des Moines, starting in generations before her. I believe she and Sister Donna Schmidt may have attended St. Joseph Academy at the same time. As a mother, grandmother, past teacher of English and speech, she became an associate in the year 2000. Important factors in her decision to become an associate were her friendship with CHM sisters, the desire to pray in community with other women, and to learn and grow in her spiritual life. My connection with Pat was through the New Hope community in Des Moines during my formation process. Pat was part of a group of women who came to our house to talk about the scriptures and break bread together on Saturday mornings. Pat shared a woman's perspective on scripture and the church that broadened my horizons. A lover of poetry, she introduced me to poems by Mary Oliver and the Carmelite nun Jessica Powers. I will be forever grateful for that. Pat had a great love for the CHMs and enjoyed coming to assembly. She even made a trip to Villa Maria, Pennsylvania to visit the HMs with Sisters Kathy and Joanne Tallarico. Pat volunteered at Bishop Drum, visiting with the sisters there. With the help of Kathy, I have many words that can describe Pat. She was a woman of strong opinions and a champion of the downtrodden. She didn't always agree with the church, but loved the rosary. She was a lifelong reader, learner, and spiritual explorer. Using the words of Mary Oliver, she lived well her one wild and precious life.
Caroline Mars and I got acquainted in 2022 by phone when she lived alone in a lovely home in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Her husband was a chemist who died in his 50s. She attributed his death to the hazards of his profession. Caroline was a prayerful woman who helped Sister Dorothy Chevalier, CHM, chaplain at St. John's Hospital, by visiting patients, sharing her faith, and making them laugh with her wit. Through her association with Sister Dorothy, Caroline chose to become an associate with the Sisters of Humility. Caroline's pets were a small dog and a talking parrot. She had 2 children and 5 grandchildren who all lived out of town, but remained in close touch by texting. In 2022, Caroline went to live in nursing care. In our contacts for a year, she was unable to inform me of her illness, but it seemed as if she was in solitude and died in September 2023, a year later. Caroline was a gifted poet who claimed her words were orchestrated by the Lord, and through His Spirit, she merely wrote them down with pen on paper, taking no credit for them. She gave me a folder of her poetry, some of which have been printed in the Associates newsletter, The Spark. I would like to read one of them to you. Your brightness. How much do I love you? I needn't count the ways. You fill my gentle senses, you brighten all my days. You help me climb my mountains, you drive me toward my goals. You help produce my laughter. You shield me from my foes. You strengthen me in sorrow. You calm my raging fears. You come to me in darkness. You brush away my tears. You shield me from the threshold. You catch me when I fall. You fill my void. You're in me. You're there. I need not call.
It was my privilege to work alongside Kelly Bell for 20 years. She's an unforgettable woman to all who had the good fortune to know her. We all know Kelly's attributes as a team player with a strong work ethic. I loved her work uniform and often wondered how many black shirts and trousers she must have had in her closet, along with her crazy socks. You had to love Kelly's sense of humor, her holiday-inspired fashion, her happy dances in the office, and her appreciation for nature and dogs. Kelly didn't mince words, and we agreed on most everything. She thanked me often for being outspoken, so she didn't have to be. Even when she was in pain, she was an uplifting presence. Kelly endured a lot and showed great strength through it all. She loved and cared for her family and was dedicated to her husband, Brian. Kelly was unassuming, not wasteful, fair-minded, and clever. When I was looking for a theme for the new CHM blog, I went to Kelly to brainstorm, which we did a lot of. I said, we need a hook, something interesting to everyone. And she told me about her fascination with the sisters' habits back in the day and how they had deep pockets that they carried all sorts of things in. Thus was born a nun's pocket. I remember how excited she was to meet Norman Lear. That was a great moment for us all, I think. She enjoyed helping me organize the CHM holiday gift swap and was tickled when I would find a little wooden statue among the boxes of donations and gift it to her for her collection. We loved learning that our grandparents went to high school together. Kelly really enjoyed our annual staff outings. The one that stands out for me was when we took a dinner river cruise on the Celebration Belle. She brought Brian along as her guest, and I brought Leah. We sat together for the meal and had a delightful time. Kelly and Brian really cared about Leah and enjoyed seeing her grow. There are so many memories that I know we all have. Kelly was a great woman, and I miss her.